Well, hello there. Welcome to Critical Weight Theory, a podcast where albums don't just get reviewed, they get dissected, exploded, and reassembled. So I'm Wade, and today I'm rewinding the reel to 1967, the year that rock music got a hard reset, courtesy of the Jimi Hendrix experience, which really only existed for sort of a brief burst, but it was a powerful one. So the album we're talking about, Are You Experienced? The artist, the Jimi Hendrix experience, and the impact was nothing short of nuclear. And let's be real here. Jimi Hendrix didn't just play guitar. He reprogrammed what it meant to even touch one. Before Hendrix, the electric guitar was a tool. After Hendrix, it was a weapon, a spaceship, a preacher, a scream, and people really explored the sonic palette of the guitar more than they ever did previously. And I know that might sound like hyperbole to dish out that type of praise, but it's true. You know, the song that really kind of epitomizes that for a lot of people is Purple Haze. You know, there's a real growl to Purple Haze, and it's psychedelic chaos in the track Manic Depression. It's a very moody track too. It was actually kind of a dark song, and you had the raw seduction of Foxy Lady, which proved that you could have sort of like a seductive rock song that was funky at the same time. Hendrix made distortion, feedback, and chaos not just acceptable, but essential potential elements to the evolution of rock. And he wasn't the first guitarist to use effects. Let's be clear on that one. But he was the first to own them, if you want to put it that way, bending sound into something new, part blues, part funk, part acid trip, noise ritual. It was blues for the space age, and it hit like a revelation. And an interesting fact is that Jimi Hendrix actually was a bit of a sci fi nerd because I don't remember, I mean, forgive me, I don't remember the name of the story, but Purple Haze got its very title from some sci fi book, which is kind of an interesting little bit of trivia. So, he was a person who was inspired by some of the, I guess, space exploration aspects of sci-fi, and it really comes through with some of his themes on his albums. You know, he talks a lot about sort of space alien type stuff if you really pay attention, and that all kind of it all kind of merges to his psychedelic aspects too. You know, the use of backward guitar riffs, and of course the Beatles kind of made that innovation first. But I think Jimi Hendrix kind of he kind of did his own thing with it. I don't think you could accuse him of just mindlessly simulating the Beatles' psychedelic um, techniques. I think Hendrix sort of took some of those elements and explored them in a different way. And it wasn't just about riffs or solos either. Hendrix and producer Chaz Chandler brought full on studio wizardry. You know, the aforementioned reverse guitar, tape manipulation, reverb that sounded like it came from another planet. This wasn't just music, it was engineering mayhem. And Hendrix was also pretty famous for his ability to merge lead and rhythm parts. So he seemed to recognize that as a false dichotomy between rhythm and lead. He really didn't want to be, I guess, sidelined by those sort of false distinctions. So he he would often kind of blend the two together. And let's not sugarcoat it. Hendrix was a virtuoso. Now, a lot of people they downplay his ability to shred, but best guitarist ever isn't hyperbole. It's a fact for many. And one of the reasons he's considered the best guitarist is simply how natural his playing sounded. It didn't just sound like it was showing off, although, to an extent he was, but he so often made it things just sound like they were part of his personality when they were coming through his fingertips. Or I guess if he was playing with his teeth, through his teeth, because he did engage in those types of theatrics, but they always kind of not only added to his mythology and his status as a rock god in the pantheon, but they also just sounded sort of natural while also sounding, I guess, unnatural at a lot of junctures. His fingers didn't just shred, they painted. He used the guitar sort of like an artist might use a brush, and there were experimental techniques, of course, but quite often he seemed to have full control over what he was doing, and he would sometimes improvise. And if it did come across as a mistake, it was really just because he was, he was raw. He was trying new things all the time. So sure, you could hear live performances where it was quote unquote sloppy, but he was always trying something new. And I guess you could say the same thing of other guitarists like Frank Zappa, of course, and so many others who don't have that totally 100% polished sound. But one of the great things about Hendrix is that he could sometimes play smooth, but a lot of the times he wanted to be, out there and exploring, pushing the guitar parts to the edge, and sometimes, pushing them over the edge. And he set a new bar for technical skill and improvisation that players are still chasing. And really, one of the distinctions you can make is between a guitarist who could play all of the right notes and play really fast and, sort of wow people by their technical prowess, and people who sometimes play the wrong notes to make a statement. That's really a distinction you can make between uh, a skilled guitarist and an artist, really. But what really broke the mold is that Hendrix, he fronted a rock power trio as a black man in a genre dominated by white faces at the time. Because even though obviously rock started as a black genre, it was also starting to become a little bit, I guess, safe for just average white American listeners. And Hendrix kind of brought that, I guess you could say that, that non white face back into rock music, which I think it really needed at the time. And he did break racial boundaries. His band was multiracial, and he was tearing down stylistic boundaries as well. So his look, his energy, and his presence, he wasn't just a player. He was like a revolution in terms of also having a stage presence. Yet, the main thing about rock at this point, I think, was that it was a transformational period, just like you had, the social causes that were emerging in the 1960s. Well, there were also new sounds that people were pursuing. And obviously, Jimi Hendrix was one of the people who was the pioneer of sound at the time. And, you could challenge yourself to play like Hendrix, but I think one of the main things about his legacy is that you should really kind of do your own thing, and that's really one of the most impressive things for me about him. Is it's when I listen to him, I don't even try to sound like him when I pick up a guitar. I just try to sound like myself, and that way it seems more honest. I'm not trying to ape his style, and I think that's what he would want other guitarists to do, really. So he was playing in real time, but he was always looking ahead, and that's really what a quality musician and composer will do. And Are You Experienced cracked the genre wide open. It didn't just expand rock's palette; it blew the frame off the damn easel, you might say. So from Led Zeppelin to Prince, everyone who came after either chased Hendrix or tried not to get swallowed by his shadow. And you might say that, oh, this person's a better guitarist, or whatever, if you want, but at the same time, I think I think Hendrix is, if I had to pick any guitarist who really exemplifies what I would consider to be greatness in guitar playing, it would be him, mostly because of the rawness of it. I think he really encouraged others to pursue their own path creatively, and that to me is really what makes him so innovative. He was outrageous and flawed. Of course, you can find stories about him being abusive to people and stuff like that. But that's one of the things about artists. They tend to be tumultuous people, and just like his music, he was unpredictable as a person and emotional, and I guess sometimes you might say a little on the violent side. But underneath it all was also some genius and some gentleness and the kind of clarity that only comes with complete creative freedom. And in my opinion, no one's ever really caught up to him. I know that's going to sound like BS to say that, but he's somebody who was just, I guess, so far out there that if if you really were to try to understand exactly what he did, you'd almost have to be off in outer space yourself or something like that. So if you're asking how old is this rock, Are You Experienced is ancient, mythic, and still light years ahead. It does sound oddly almost like a timeless album, while also sounding like a 1960s album and all that kind of stuff. It also sounds, you know, futuristic in many ways. And I think I've said enough praise of him. It already probably sounds like I'm praising him too much or whatever. But if you want me to look at another album, something punk adjacent, progressive metal, or just completely out of left field, of course I've got more. Hendrix isn't the only person that I listen to or anything like that. So hit me up in the comments, or if you have any questions about what I feel about this album or Jimi Hendrix or any other topic, that's cool. Go on ahead and let me know about that. So until next time, keep your ears wide open and your mind blown.